Hey guys, Muse Ninja Matt here. So here it is, the last video that I will be doing. We've got an awful lot to cover. As always, there will be spoilers for the subjects I'm going to be talking about, and there will be timestamps down below to break everything up. So the video is going to be split up into three main sections. First, we're going to have my extra thoughts / bits of news. We're going to have a couple of new comic books to talk about. I say a couple, there is loads. And then finally, we're going to finish it off with a couple of movie reviews, including my Far From Home review. So to start off, I quickly wanted to talk about AEW. Obviously, I have covered wrestling before on this, a lot of WWE stuff, and now AEW, they did Double or Nothing. We've seen all the bits and pieces they're going to be getting up to. And watching this product, obviously everyone's trying to feel out the product. What's it going to be like? What kind of tone is it going for? When watching something like Double or Nothing, of course there's little bits and pieces that feel a bit off. Sometimes the commentary felt a bit off for me, but I think bits like that is them still trying to find their feet. They're still getting used to doing these shows and everyone working together. But also in Double or Nothing, there was so much good stuff. Matches were built so well. There's some amazing talents within AEW. There's some guys I've never seen before that just really interested me and gripped me. Guys like MJF. The most important part of this product was it felt fresh. It felt new and unique and fun. It also managed to feel somehow silly yet edgy all at the same time. There were some little bits where I thought, don't do that. Stuff like when on the pre-show they're going, don't forget to tune into the main show. This is a very WWE thing that they do, and I've always gone, don't do this. You don't need to plug the main show. If I'm watching the pre-show, I'm gonna be watching the main show. The best thing AEW does is lets you know very quickly and very easily who are these wrestlers, what is their gimmick, what are they all about. It's so easy to understand and to get into. It's a very exciting project overall with all the events they've done and have coming up, and it's not about them bringing WWE down. It's about them pushing WWE to be better, because then we can have two amazing companies competing to be the best, and that's so fun to watch. Next up, E3. Just wanted to talk about the things that really stood out to me personally, because so much got announced. The Xbox Project Scarlet, it's going to be coming out winter 2020, and it's going to have the new Halo game as a launch title. I think that's really going to help the console because I'm really excited for the new Halo game. I'm sure plenty of people are. But it's meant to be an incredibly powerful console, and it is backwards compatible. One of the rumours was that it wasn't going to be. I just always like seeing Sony and Microsoft and what announcements they can throw at us to win us over on their product. The new Dragon Ball game I'm very excited for. I always like the Dragon Ball games, and this one, even though we've only seen little bits and pieces, I'm excited. I really am, because I just love that story and that world. Breath of the Wild sequel, how could you not be excited? That game was absolutely amazing, and the fact that they're going ahead with a direct sequel, that's really cool. The main thing I was excited for was the Avengers game announcement, and I had very mixed feelings. I think the trailer was just not very well put together, and that kind of hurt the game, but I think the actual gameplay could be very fun, and the character models, they just are different. I don't think they're bad. I think we're all just so used to everyone looking like the MCU characters. So we'll see what they do going forward. We got some more Fallen Order gameplay, got to see some of the combat, and it actually looks pretty good. Link's Awakening as well. This is a game I'm very excited for. I love the art style. It's a game I've never actually played, so this could be like my version that I'll sink my teeth into. Yes, there was Final Fantasy VII news, but more exciting to me, I saw online that they will be doing a Final Fantasy VIII remaster, which I'm more excited for, because Final Fantasy VII is very accessible, whereas 8 isn't so much so. And finally, it looks like Sega's going to be doing a proper official mini console like Nintendo did, because I really wanted a Sega one, and there's a lot of them out there, they're just not great. Some little news, rumours, tidbits now. As far as the Fantastic Four film goes, apparently it will be released in like 2022 roughly. It's meant to be set in the 60s, which would be interesting. But as far as casting goes, the big names that are being thrown around, of course, is John Krasinski for Mr. Fantastic, Emily Blunt for Invisible Woman, and Liam Hemsworth as Human Torch, which I think would be quite cool. Some wrestling news, briefly, is just that, of course, Paul Heyman and Eric Bischoff are taking over Raw and SmackDown. This really could turn the product around. It could take a while, but it's a step in the right direction. We know that Taskmaster is going to be in Black Widow, and he is an awesome villain, so I'm very excited to see him come to the MCU, and I'm wondering how they'll do him. There's rumours about Wolverine casting. I can't pronounce the actor's name. I just know him as the guy from Kingsman, and at first I was like, no way. Then when I actually saw photos of him, he has a look of a young Hugh Jackman, but that's the other thing, he's quite young. And I'm wondering if this really is the direction they want to go. Will they make him look older? Will they genuinely just have a young Wolverine? It's a strange one. Thor 4 has been confirmed. Apparently it's going to be announced at San Diego Comic-Con 2019. I did post up on my Facebook and Twitter about this, but San Diego Comic-Con 2019 I will not be covering. It's going to be the first big event that I don't cover, that I just sit down and watch as a fan without being like stressing, making YouTube notes, getting everything in order. I visited the Avengers station as it's set up in Cardiff. It's basically like a museum. I found it very fun. Wished it was a little more interactive, because there's parts where you think it's going to be like really in-depth, people in character, but not so much. It was just really awesome learning the science behind the MCU, because you feel like you're in a real museum. You feel like the MCU is part of our world, because they're saying, well, this is how the Hulk works, and this is how Tony Stark's tech works, and they put it in real terms. You get to see the props as well, bits and pieces of what was used. That's always fun when you're a fan of movies. And they did have little fun activities for you to do. They had stuff like testing your strength and seeing where do you match up against the Avengers. I tried playing Wizards Unite, the Harry Potter game from Niantic. It's in the same vein as Pokemon Go. I haven't spent a huge amount of time with it, but I just can't get into it. I love the Harry Potter world, but so much of the game I'm like, why am I doing this? This feels complicated and messy and hard to navigate. Hopefully, as time goes on, the game will have more to do and will be a bit more clear. Moving on to the next section now then, books, and there is a lot of them. I'm not going to be going into as much detail as I usually do and showing the art, all that kind of stuff, only because I've got a huge stack of books and I don't want this to run for like 3 hours, because I talk enough as it is, as you all know. So we're kicking things off with Last Night on Earth. It's by Scott Snyder and Greg Capullo, and the premise of this book is just Scott and Greg, what would be the last Batman story you told? What is the ending to your Batman saga? And I loved it. It had a lot of amazing twists in it. They build such a unique world within the story, and it's a fresh and interesting concept. I've got a few more reprints, facsimile books, that kind of thing, of books I've never read, so they're new to me. Got Hulk 181. It's the debut of Wolverine. It is by Len Wein and Herb Trimpe. And it's cool for me seeing how Wolverine and Hulk are not only both drawn, but written in this book, because it's very different to what I'm used to. It's a very fun, yet quite emotional story in this book. It's got awesome action in it, and a rather hard-hitting ending. And just really cool seeing all the reprinted ads and bulletins and letters. We've got the Amazing Spider-Man 252 reprint. This is Spider-Man, he's just come back from Secret Wars, so he's debuting the black suit. It's by Roger Stern, Tom DeFalco, Ron Frenz, and Brett Breeding. It's just Peter being back at home and adjusting to the new suit. And for me, who read Secret Wars a while ago, I like seeing some of the aftermath of that event. We've got this special Incredible Hulk Last Call story. It's part of the 80 Years of Marvel. It's part of the 80 Years of Marvel line of comics. It's by Peter David and Dale Keown. So in continuity, it's set just after the Abomination has killed Betty. It's a hard-hitting story that looks at Bruce and Betty's life together. Bruce talks about depression, he talks about his hatred towards himself. and it's a really dark tone. But this changes when we get to the final battle. It kind of lightens up a bit. Bruce ends up saving this woman's life, and we get this really awesome Deadpool cameo at the end. It's a solid book, really great, and the Stan Lee soapbox that is included as well, very powerful. We have Event Leviathan, one of DC's new big events. This is the first issue. It's by Brian Michael Bendis and Alex Maleev. Wasn't really a fan of this book. I found with the art, the colour palette made it really hard to make out what was going out on the page. Wasn't really a fan of the page layout, the writing. I found it very confusing, to be honest, to figure out what was going on. From the bits I could pick up, it's a good mystery book in that way, and it also has an awesome advert for Krypton in it, and I only bring this up because it's actual panels and it's a proper comic book but an advert at the same time. One of the cooler reprints I got was Howard the Duck issue 1. I just couldn't help myself but pick this up. This is by Steve Gerber and Frank Brunner. You notice straight away the tone isn't what you're expecting. It's quite dark. Howard is clearly depressed in this book. He's very angry, but he's also still full of attitude. It's one of those books that has a dark tone, yes, but somehow maintains its humour and is actually just flat out silly in places. It's a Conan-like adventure, and he even teams up with Spider-Man, and Howard gets his chance to show that he is a hero. A book that really snuck up on me when I was like, that's a thing, that's awesome, I had to pick it up, is Superman Year One, and it's by Frank Miller and John Romita Jr. It's another retelling of Superman's origin, and the art style, the writing style, I'm aware of both these guys, read plenty that they've done, so it's all very familiar to me. It is a very gorgeous book. The only nitpick about the art is some characters do look very similar. The way some characters are written took me some getting used to, but really enjoyed it all by the end. At times when there is humour in the book, it's spot on, it's very realistic, I think. It's a great mix of being a very heartwarming and fun book in some places, but then actually quite thought-provoking in some of the sadder moments. Clark deals with everyday problems, and these are the moments where the book can get a little bit darker, but the book feels original, and I love it for that. We've got what I'm calling the first book in the Acts of Evil event. It's the Miss Marvel Annual 1, and this is by Magdalene Visaggio and John Lamb. And Acts of Evil, it's a play on some of the other Acts of events that they've done in the past, and it's just heroes fighting villains they usually don't get to. And I thought I'd just look at the first one because it's a similar premise, and they're running through a handful of annuals. So this one was Miss Marvel versus the Super Skrull, and the Super Skrull wants to use Miss Marvel and her powers to wipe the Earth clean, ready for the Skrulls to take over. The book can be a little cheesy, but it's got some really clever humour in it. The art's okay as well, it's got quite a manga feel to it, and it does a really good job at making you sympathise with all the characters, hero and villain. Just a fun and touching book. I was actually very pleasantly surprised with it. Didn't think I was going to enjoy it and ended up really digging it. Another reprint now, it's New Mutants 98, and this is the debut of Deadpool. It is by Rob Liefeld and Fabian Nicieza. We get to meet Gideon, and he is not as he seems. Also meet Deadpool and Domino, and we get to see them in action. And we get to see a little bit of Cable training the team as well. The Deadpool versus Cable fight is just awesome, and I actually found the writing for all the characters really enjoyable. It's an action-packed great story in this issue, and the art is a mixture of going from very detailed to quite simple from page to page. Then we've got quite a large book actually. It's Marvel Tales featuring Captain America. Again, these are to celebrate 80 years of Marvel, so it's highlighting characters and it gives you a few stories for that character that highlight who they are. So the people that worked on this book, it's Stan Lee, Jack Kirby, John Romita Sr., Roger Stern, John Byrne, Mark Gruenwald and Paul Neary. So it features 4 key stories. We've got Tales of Suspense number 59, and this story is just Cap defending the Avengers base on his own, and it's his chance to show how amazing he is and what his fighting skills are like. Super fun story, and I think it was Cap's first time within Tales of Suspense. We then get Tales of Suspense number 77, and it's a story about Cap and Peggy and how he lost her. It's a very dramatic story. We then get get Captain America issue 255, and this was the 40th anniversary issue, which is retelling Captain America's origin in full. And I loved this. This is great for anybody that wants to get into the character. It lets you know Cap's story and who he is. Just a really beautiful story. Then finally we had Captain America number 307. It's Mark's first issue, so it's a pretty big deal. We get to see Captain Britain, which obviously I was like, woo, go UK. But it's basically a story about Nomad and Madcap. It doesn't really involve Captain America, and I believe it's Madcap's first appearance. And it's just Madcap going around creating chaos, and Nomad is just trying to be better at himself. Naturally, we end up getting Nomad versus Madcap in a fight, and after this fight, everything just starts falling apart for Nomad. I thought the story was interesting with a great villain. The art is gorgeous throughout. Just really love the old school look of comic books. Next up, we've got Weapon Plus issue 1, and this is by Ethan Sachs and Diogenes Neves. I thought the art was really cinematic and nice, however it does dip in a few places for me. It's a very violent story, and it basically just shows that the Weapon Plus program connects loads of characters together. It connects the Super Soldier Serum and Weapon X, all that kind of stuff. It's showing that actually the creation of Captain America inspired a lot of other experiments, and some of them are not very nice. It's actually got some like horror elements to it. There are parts of the book, especially when it comes to the villains, that's very eerie. There's a character called Younger, and he basically wanted to be the next Captain America. That's like his life's dream. So he's the one that is making all these different weapons, doing all these different experiments, and Cap and Wolverine end up fighting one of those experiments called Adam, and at the end we see there is a new secret weapon called Weapon XXX. Raunchy. With this, I don't know if I want to continue this series. I thought it was a one-shot, but it's actually meant to launch into a whole new story, but I just found this a little dull. Got the Wolverine vs. Blade special. This is by Mark Guggenheim and Dave Wilkins. This book has that awesome photorealistic, stunning art. It is super violent, but also has some great humour in it. It's Wolverine and Blade killing the undead. We get a cameo appearance from Doctor Strange. It's the Creed vampire group. They want to raise their Messiah, and it's rumoured that the Messiah is meant to be a mutant. So we get a few cool mutant vampire hybrids. Naturally, there's a misunderstanding at one point, which means that Wolverine and Blade also have a cool fight, but then by the end they team up to take out the main bad guy, who just so happens to be a Wolverine vampire clone. And this story was just amazing. It was so well written and told, and it's just packed with fun and action. Got X-Men #1, which I was so excited when I picked this up. It's by Stan Lee and Jack Kirby, of course. I really enjoy the art in this, but Iceman's original design just looks a bit odd to me. The writing is charming and cheesy. It flip-flops as the story goes. We get to meet the team and see what they're about, and it is them meeting Jean Grey for the first time. And we get to see Magneto. He's causing trouble as per usual for the humans. And Magneto used to have like horns on his helmet. I'm really glad they got rid of those. But we do see Magneto's power and just what he's capable of and how badass he is as a villain. So we get to see X-Men versus Magneto, this classic battle. Magneto is able to escape at the end, but you have this army base that the X-Men saved, and they thank the X-Men, and I'm like, this is interesting, the X-Men actually being acknowledged as heroes. A new series from DC that really captured my interest is Collapser. It's from the Young Animal imprint, and it's by Mikey Way, Sean Simon, and Elias Kirises. And the book is dedicated to Dimitris Kirises. It's got great humour, and it's a proper adult book. I like the very punk art style of it, and it's got some really interesting visuals. We meet our main character Liam, and we see his struggles. We see that he's got a very stressful job. We see that he suffers with anxiety, but we also see that being a DJ and music, that's his happy place, that's his calm place. We also see a side of him where he's got quite a bad temper, and he pushes people away, he blames others for when his life is a bit crappy. At the start of this story, we see an alien-looking woman who has been killed. This ties in with Liam as he gets left a box from his mother, and it contains a black hole. This black hole fuses with him, and naturally weird stuff starts happening and he starts being hunted. This book is just so well written and very gripping. Just a great first issue that gives you enough that you know the character, you want to read more, but we're just at the end of the issue seeing this dark hole fuse with him, and you go, well, what's going to happen next? I was very much drawn to the book at the idea that it deals with depression and anxiety, but also shows that music is something that very much helps that. And the final book now, Giant Size X-Men #1. So this is by Len Wein and Dave Cockrum. So it's the formation of a new X-Men team, which includes Nightcrawler, Wolverine, Banshee, Storm, Sunfire, Colossus, and John Proudstar. Cyclops comes into it and he fills the new team in on how the old team disappeared. So naturally they go on a rescue mission. They manage to find the old team and we meet the main villain of this story, who's a mutant that is actually an entire island. Just a pretty cool twist, and we get an awesome battle out of it. Also in the book is a couple of little background stories for some characters, and these were done by Stan Lee, Roy Thomas, Werner Roth, Arnold Drake and Linda Fight. There's one for Cyclops, one for Iceman and one for Jean, and these are very cheesy stories and they're basically used to answer fan questions or nitpicks. Overall this book has solid art, fun stories, and the writing is okay for the time the book came out. And again, looking through the book, seeing the ads, seeing Stan's soapbox, seeing the bulletins, I was like, these books are so cool. Moving on to the last section now, movie reviews, starting with Detective Pikachu. So with the characters, the movie focuses on Tim and Pikachu. Tim was a little off as a character for me. I thought his arc was quite rushed. However, Pikachu was delightful in this movie, but it took a while to get used to Pikachu as a character, I think. A lot of the acting from some of the supporting cast was really cheesy, but it fit in with the Pokemon world. I love the world they built within this movie, seeing Pokemon roaming around within the real world. Them interacting with humans was just magical. And I like how in the city they say Pokemon aren't pets or anything like that, they are equal to humans. The tone was a bit strange because it had some really dark mystery elements to it while also being fun and silly. The story itself was actually quite straightforward, I think, but with some really amazing twists in it. It's just the two main characters teaming up to solve a mystery and try to figure out who is the main villain and then go on to stop a bad guy plot. Mewtwo played a huge part in this movie, and seeing him from the very start, really mind-blowing. He isn't the main villain, he's actually the unsung hero of the movie, and his power to be able to fuse a human soul with a Pokemon is key to the plot of the movie. We even got a reference to the first Pokemon movie, where they were saying 20 years ago Mewtwo actually escaped from this facility, and you're like, oh, it's all canon. And there's even the bit where Pikachu's singing the Pokemon theme song. I thought that was cute. Just great references like that throughout. My favourite scene though was the battle between Charizard and Pikachu. It's just what you want a Pokemon battle to be. The ending was a really sweet reveal, but it begs the question, where do you go forward with this franchise if you want to make another Detective Pikachu movie? Overall, this movie was okay. It was fun, but nothing particularly special to me. Toy Story 4, really don't have much to say about it. There was no opening Pixar movie like they normally do. It was a very Woody-based movie, and people have pointed out to me they're all about Woody. I know, but that spotlight is shared with Buzz, with Jessie, with other characters. In this, it didn't feel like it. All other characters fell into the background, and characters like Buzz, it felt like he'd really regressed as a character, back to just being a bit of a dimwit, which I didn't like. There were some touching moments in this movie, and some really nice themes that they put out there. Overall, I just felt like this movie wasn't needed. Everyone was like, this was the ending we deserve. And I'm like, no, we had that with Toy Story 3. And I didn't know what to make of the ending. I get it's Woody going off and finding a new home and a new purpose. But for him to also leave his friends, I was just like, that doesn't sit well with me. I would have liked to have seen all of them stick together and just be happy together. So this next one's going to be a controversial one because it's Dark Phoenix. Why controversial? Well, because I really liked this movie. Charles and Hank had crazy character arcs in this. We get to see the darker side of both of them, but everything comes full circle for them in the end. With Jean, I didn't find her annoying as Phoenix, as most people have said. I thought her actions made sense, and in some parts she was just straight up a badass. The main villains were the alien race, the Dabari. They tried to manipulate Jean because they want the power that's inside her. And I liked this element of the movie, having a decent main villain to manipulate Jean. As far as the X-Men go, they were a polished team, they were combining their powers, and I liked that they were accepted by the government finally, that they had the phone that they picked up to be like, yes, Mr. President, we're on our way. There were some really savage moments in this, like when Nightcrawler just snaps and starts stabbing people with his tail. I actually enjoyed all the action set pieces within this movie. The only part, again, this will sound crazy, the only part I found silly was when Magneto brought up the train cart because there was no reason for him to do it. So we've got some big action moments in this, as I said, such as the Death of Raven battle, when you had people coming to hunt down and kill Jean, and Cyclops gets to deliver an awesome line because they always have one F-bomb in these X-Men movies, and Cyclops just turns around and says, I will fucking kill you, when they're trying to come to get her. And then we had the final battle to actually protect Jean. It was epic seeing them all come together at the end to stand as one. And we got the moment of Jean finally realising that Charles wasn't just trying to use her or manipulate her or hold her back, that he really does care about her. I just thought it was a pretty cool moment. Some other scenes I like were the party scene, where we saw, well, yeah, teenage X-Men would be having parties and stuff at the mansion. We even got to see Dazzler in a movie. It's just one of those moments where I'm like, this isn't all serious, all dark and brooding. I also thought the movie was very well paced. There was no point where I was bored or that I felt it was too rushed. After Jean makes her sacrifice, we see them put up the new name of the school, which is the Jean Grey School, and that actually takes place in the comics at one point as well. And the final scene where it's Magneto and Charles and they're saying we're retired and they sit and they play chess, it just felt like a perfect ending. Overall for me, this was satisfying, this was emotional, and I found it pretty epic. To me, it's one of my favourite X-Men films because it felt like an X-Men film. Just super quick before I get on to Far From Home, I went to see Endgame again because they had the promise of the extra added content. It's like 6 or 7 minutes of new content if you went to see it again in theatres. It was literally an intro saying like, thank you, wait till the end of the movie. The movie was the same. We saw a cool Stan Lee tribute of him hanging out with the cast. That was nice. But then we got a deleted Hulk scene, which was unfinished CGI and just didn't really think much of it, because part of you was like, yeah, this wouldn't have really worked in the movie. And they said before the deleted scene, oh, we had so much we could show you, but we've picked this one. And I'm like, this is a crappy scene to have picked. And then we get a look at Spider-Man Far From Home. Turns out it's just the opening of the movie, but like the first 5 seconds of it. So yeah, it was disappointing. So finally, I will get on with it. It is the main reason for this video, the main event, and the last thing I'll be talking about on YouTube. So this is my thoughts on Spider-Man Far From Home. With the pace, they didn't mess around with this movie, they kept the movie flowing, and the movie throws you straight in. Like, we see Mysterio pretty much straight away. I like that they didn't lose the element of it being a teen movie. There's still all the awkward interactions with the kids. It still has the high school elements. And this whole movie had a unique feel to it. It didn't actually feel like a Marvel movie in a lot of ways to me. And the main theme that is over this film is who will be the next Iron Man. We're in a whole new stage now for the MCU where you're going, where are the Avengers? There are no Avengers. Like, who's gonna step up? The movie did a really good job very early on, in a very casual way, addressing the blip, addressing people coming back, and addressing some of the heroes that passed away during Endgame. I like that Aunt May has a charity set up that is specifically to help people who were blipped back, whose lives have changed totally. She even mentions that when she blipped back, she went, well, the family that were living in my apartment, you know, the grandmother thought I was a ghost, the wife thought I was a mistress. So they're saying, yeah, it wasn't smooth sailing, there were problems. Peter in this movie, charming as always, Tom Holland's awesome. And I like that we see that he is just straight up good at being Spider-Man now, just with the way he moves, with the way he fights. There's plenty of moments moments in this film as well where he does get to show his intelligence, which I think is so important, because Peter Parker is crazy smart in the comics. It's something I want to see more of. I kind of wish as well Peter was a bit more quippy. He definitely does quip within the MCU, but the Spider-Man I'm used to, he uses humour as a weapon because of how awkward he is. He's so awkward as Peter Parker, he puts on the mask and he's confident and he's quippy and he's making jokes. I think we should see more of that. Spider-Sense as well gets addressed, his Peter tingle, and I like how it's kind of explained. It's almost like emotionally affected, that if he is drained and tired, it's not going to be as switched on. So he's having problems with it, but he's learning to master it. The whole supporting cast is wonderful as always. I kind of wish we got to see more of people like Ned, because it felt like he didn't get to do nearly as much this film. Mysterio was amazing. Probably one of the best MCU villains, definitely. I love how they built up his character, and I loved the twist where it finally hit you that he's the villain. Jake Gyllenhaal was amazing. He did a wonderful job. He was silly. He was a really cheesy villain, but in the best way, in the most comic book accurate way. He was clearly a genius. He was clearly pretty damn evil as well, and ruthless. He's also very cunning. The whole thing is the revenge of ex-Stark employees. The technology from Civil War that Tony used, the Bath technology, that is Mysterio's illusion tech. And he hates the fact that Tony took that and didn't realise the full potential of it. We're always making fantastic connections. Nothing goes unused within the MCU. It's the idea that this team of angry ex-employees, they created Mysterio. Mysterio says that no one is willing to listen to you, no matter how smart you are, unless you've got a cape and you shoot lasers. So let's be the best superhero in the world, and then everyone will listen. So the Elementals, they are not real. They are just illusions to help with Mysterio's plan, but I don't mind that. We got to see Hydra Man and Sandman and Molten Man. These characters that, let's be honest, they're not going to have a movie all to themselves, but we get little nods to them. And the multiverse story, I thought, if it's not true, if it's all a lie, I'll be annoyed. But I'm not. I'm okay with it, because the multiverse does still exist, and Mysterio actually played on that. As always, the movie's full of references. We got to see a few different Spider-Man suits. I love the moment where Happy throws a shield and it just falls to the ground, and he's like, how does Cap do that? There's a character that could very well be the Chameleon who works for Nick Fury. There's a reference about a surfboard in there, about Nick Fury having a surfboard in his storage. Could have just been a throwaway line, could be a hint at something else. And on the flight, when Peter's flicking through all the onboard movies and programs, there's loads of references in there. Now, I have said this movie has 3 or 4 of the best scenes in an MCU movie ever for me. One of these being the first illusion battle. Something straight out of a comic book, something completely batshit crazy, when Spider-Man's fighting Mysterio and Spider-Man's there in all his different suits and he keeps thinking he's falling and crashing through glass, and then loads of Spider-Men turn up and pile on top of him, and then Mysterio's really big, and then he's inside a snow globe, which is Mysterio's head. All of it is crazy, all of it is fantastic. There's even a zombie Tony Stark in one of these illusions, and people were like, oh, they could totally do Marvel Zombies. The second illusion battle that they have, when it's Spider-Man focusing his spider sense and he's dodging everything, I do really like that sequence as well. I love the scene as well where Spider-Man's been put through the ringer, he calls Happy to pick him up, and he's freaking out, he's upset, and Happy's like, you're all alone, you've got no suit, what are you going to do about it? And Spider-Man's like, I'm going to kick his ass. And Spider-Man starts building his own suit and using Tony's tech, and Happy just looks at him and smiles, and he's like, what? He goes, nothing, you deal with the tech, I'll deal with the music. And he puts on AC/DC, and Peter turns around and he goes, oh, I love Led Zeppelin. So within Peter's character, and this scene where we're like, this well and truly is the future of the MCU, and it parallels a lot of Iron Man 1. I really loved this scene. The only complaint I do kind of have about Spider-Man in the MCU is he is very tech heavy. He is basically mini Iron Man. And part of me is like, I kind of would have preferred Peter to not have that, to not have access to all of Tony's stuff. But within the context of the MCU, it does work. The scene where he is just swinging through New York and he's taking selfies, you just get that rush, that swell of like, it's Spider-Man. He's back home, he's in New York, he's the friendly neighborhood Spider-Man. And I love as well the relationship with him and MJ in this movie. I love how it's developed. Part of me is like, it kind of came out of nowhere, but it's such a sweet relationship where you're rooting for them the whole time. And there's bits where it looks like they might not get together and your heart literally breaks. I just think MJ's a really cool character in this. I think the two of them work really well on screen together. With the end credit scenes, they're the best end credit scenes ever, probably, in my opinion. We got to see J. Jonah Jameson. It's J.K. Simmons, they've brought him back. No one else could have been Jonah, in my opinion. They've set the Daily Bugle up as like a news website instead. That's very controversial, I like that. And we get some huge changes for the Spider-Man character. Mysterio basically says, Spider-Man attacked me, and he's put this video together where it looks like Spider-Man is the bad guy. So Spider-Man's now wanted. He also turns around and goes, oh, and by the way, he's Peter Parker. So Spider-Man's identity is out there. This is huge. This is insane, and I'm so excited to see what they do with it. The theme of identity is played up a lot in this movie, and it's silly to me because Peter is so careless in the MCU with his identity. Everybody seems to know that he's Spider-Man. So the idea at all that he's like, oh no, my identity, I'm like, come on. And the last scene we get is the reveal that actually Nick Fury and Maria Hill were Skrulls, and Nick Fury is up in space. And this is cool because it could be leaning towards maybe Sword or something like that. It could be that Nick Fury is now the man on the wall, or it could just be hinting that yes, there are Skrulls on Earth and the ones we've seen are good guys, but maybe not all of them will be. Overall, I really did love this movie. It set up a lot of exciting prospects for the future. It had some fantastic scenes. Yes, there are bits and pieces where I'm like, he doesn't feel like Spider-Man that much, or this film doesn't feel much like a Marvel movie, but overall a great experience. Most people's prediction, Kraven as the next villain. He can come in and hunt down Spider-Man if he's wanted. Spider-Man might even have to go to Doctor Strange to put the genie back in the bottle. One of the weird rumours that came out as well about this movie was that if it didn't make $1 billion, that Sony would get the rights back. And I don't think this is true, because if you make 900 million, are you going to be like, no, not good enough? But yes, those were my immediate thoughts after seeing those movies. Anyway, guys, that is everything I wanted to cover in my final YouTube video. I appreciate you watching so much, as I always have. Don't forget to like this video if you enjoyed it and leave me a comment. Check out the links in the description down below. Feel free to browse all the videos on this channel, and to all of you for your support, forever humouring me for this crazy journey that I've been on YouTube. Thank you so much. Too sweet.